Joel and Tess begin their mission to bring Ellie to the Fireflies in order to get the supplies that they need. But the mission takes a devastating turn. Hello, entertainment enthusiasts. This is Ray, and this is the Fandom Realm. And today I am recapping and reviewing Episode 2 of The Last of Us. As always, this is a spoiler review, so just be aware. Now, just to let you know, this is going to be a standard just recap and then do some reactions and some thoughts at the end. And I'm going to try to keep this sort of short, to be honest, under 12 to 14 minutes, because really, when you look at The Last of Us so far, and especially the second episode, there's really only so much we can talk about. It is really only about 3 or 4 parts that we can summarize and look at individually. And so with that, I don't want to put a lot of extra things in here that you're going to want to skip over. So to me, the most important part of this entire episode was actually the beginning. And from what I understand, what happened in the beginning does not happen anywhere in the games. And they're actually going to show us what was going on in 2003 Jakarta. If you'll remember back to the first episode, you had a situation, you heard the radio in the background say something was going on in Jakarta, Indonesia, but nothing else was said about it. Well, we are actually going to skip there. That's where we start. And the authorities are looking for a professor of mycology, Ibu Ratna, and she works at a nearby university, and the authorities want her help to try to battle the infection. She's brought to a lab and shown a specimen of the cordyceps, and she's very surprised the way it has been prepared, because it's prepared for a human sample, and she basically tells them it can't be hosted on a human. And that's when the military guy, I'm not going to try to guess his rank, gives her one of these looks like, well, you're wrong about that. And so he actually takes her and lets her examine the woman that they have who was infected, who they had already killed. She had worked at a factory, and as Ibu observes and examines the body, she does look at the bite mark, which is obviously a bad sign. There's also fungus growing in the victim's mouth with spores and everything. It's sort of like tendrils in her mouth. The same tendrils that we actually saw in episode 1 in the old lady's mouth too. Ibu is shocked. She does go and sit down with the military guy. The military guy is wanting to know if there's any way she can help them. Basically, while they are talking, he reveals that patient 0 is not known. Also, there were about 14 other people who were not accounted for, and so they're out there running around. And he asks her if she can help with a vaccine or some type of medicine, and she tells him, in probably one of the most chilling moments and most well-executed moments in a scene I have seen in a long time, she tells him there is no vaccine. She has worked on this her whole life, and when he asks her what should they do, she tells him they need to bomb the city with everybody in it, and she very sadly asks to go back and be taken home so she can be with her family. Now, that was all basically almost like the cold open, and when the actual episode gets started, we actually find ourselves with Joel, Tess, and Ellie. They have taken refuge in some type of building, and we get to find out a few things. Joel and Tess are watching Ellie as she wakes up, and they're wanting to know basically what's up with her, and Ellie is going to explain that had locked her up and checked every day to see if she was infected. We do learn that Joel has a broken wrist. It's a hairline fracture, but he's going to suck it up. We also see that he is sort of wanting to backtrack on taking Ellie to the Fireflies. He's wanting to go back and find a different way to do it, but Tess really pushes him ahead. We also know that Tess tries to get more details out of Ellie, demanding to know her importance. Ellie rolls her eyes at her and eventually points out that there's a Firefly base west, and they're working on a cure. There is a funny part in all this as Joel and Tess are discussing the virus. They mention the fact that people who are infected get the shakes, and they are shocked as Ellie, basically mocking them, makes like she has shakes, and then she laughs and says, maybe it was a little too much, but I like that character moment there with Ellie. The group's going to venture out, and we're going to learn that most of the big cities had been bombed in the wake of the infection. The state house that they are headed to is about 10 minutes away, but it's a precarious trip. Joel's at the back while Ellie and Tess talk. Ellie points out that she was 14 when she was infected and reveals that she's grown up as an orphan. There aren't swarms of infected people roaming the streets, but that's not to say there aren't worse things out there. We hear an ominous scream in the distance that confirms things are not exactly peaceful, and the group press through a hotel. Basically, they head up the 10 floors and don't really meet anybody or meet any of the, we're just going to call them fungus zombies. I like that name. Eventually, Ellie and Joel talk, but they barely say a couple words to one another without them fighting back and forth. Ellie mentions the guard he beat to death, and he regrets it. They press on and find all the infected laying together down on the streets and spilling out of nearby buildings. At this point, Tess points out that the cordyceps is all connected. Basically, it's like a fungus that can run underground, and stepping on one piece in one area can bring all the others from different areas. And I'm not exactly sure here, but I heard somebody say that is not part of the game. Somebody make a comment below and let me know. They had a choice of 2 routes. The long way around is a no-go. The only other solution is to go through the museum. That's the shortcut, although it looks to be overgrown with fungus, so it looks like the most dangerous. Outside, it's bone dry, so the trio decide to press on and continue into the building. Now, unfortunately, as they enter the building, they are going to find where there is a dead person there, rather recently killed, and they're going to run into even bigger problems because they're going to run into a clicker. And that, I'm just going to say, I'm calling them fungus zombies, and they call them clickers. And I'm going to tell you, they are very impressive looking creations with the way the fungus has grown almost into mushrooms. It looks like a little bit. Very interesting the way they have done the costumes on those. Joel tells them not to make a sound, so Ellie does, and it causes Joel to have to fight one. With that, some very tense scenes going on here as the clicker is extremely hard to kill, and it is very difficult for both Joel and Ellie to survive the clicker attacks. It is Joel who manages to get the killer blow on both foes, and they come away with Ellie scratched and Tess sporting a twisted ankle. After the clicker encounter, the group head up to the roof. Tess has twisted her ankle, so Joel helps her out. Tess bemoans Joel's negative attitude and encourages him to go and see to Ellie instead. When he goes to talk to Ellie, they do see the state house place they're looking for in the distance. The group make it to the state house, where Joel goes forward and investigates. There are lots of blood splatters, fresh ones. They actually saw a truck out front that was empty. Again, some blood splatters. All this indicates that someone is inside the building. Tess goes ahead with Ellie, where they find several deceased people on the floor. Joel takes up the rear and observes the damage. Doesn't look like the Fedra soldiers were involved in this, and all the fireflies have been killed. Apparently, they were infected, and I guess they killed each other. Now, as they're walking around and taking a look at everything that's going on, they're having something of a debate about what to do. One of the dead humans is going to probably be turning into a clicker or into the fungus zombie, and as it lurches towards the group, Joel shoots it in the head, but as it lands, its hand lands on some of the live fungus, and as we were warned earlier, that live fungus is interconnected, and the fungus is going to transmit a signal to that large group of fungus zombies that was outdoor that our group saw earlier when Tess was actually telling them, hey, this is how they can transmit when they need help. And so you see that large group of zombies heading towards the state house. Now, it's at this point where Tess is going to decide to stay. What no one has realized yet is that she has been infected. She was actually bitten sometime at the museum area, and what's going to happen is she goes around, and the big thing here is it's revealed that she is infected. With that, Tess really thinks Ellie could be maybe the cure. and she makes Joel basically commit to getting her to people in authority so that they can maybe see if she is someone who they can work out any type of cure for. And with that, Tess does decide to stay behind. She is going to look through all the Firefly equipment. There's lots of guns, there's gasoline, there's grenades, and she starts throwing stuff on the ground. She puts gas on the floor, and eventually Joel decides he has to leave. He grabs Ellie's hand and they head out the door. As they leave, Tess is going to be standing to the side, and she's in a situation where all of the zombies start coming into the room. Now, with this, she has a lighter, and of course, it's not wanting to light. And she's trying, and she's trying, and she's trying, and she's trying. One of the zombies starts walking towards her, and as it gets closer, you're not really sure what's going to happen, but you also know that if she's bitten, what are they actually going to do to her? Because, they can't infect her anymore. And so, basically, Tess just stands there. The other zombie gets close to her, and the tendrils are coming out of its mouth, and eventually, it's almost like they kiss. It's not a kiss, but it's basically the one zombie puts its tendrils in her mouth, and just as they start the kiss, she gets the lighter to light, and she throws it on the ground where it hits the gasoline, and everything that's in there is going to cause a large explosion, and we do see that explosion as Joel and Ellie walk away from the State House. And with that, episode number 2 comes to an end. Okay, now that we have finished the recap, I do want to throw some thoughts out there and reactions, and I do want to try to keep this at least a little bit shorter, or I'm not going to get close to my under 14 minutes. So, first big thing I wanted to talk about is just that cold opening and how awesome it was. The fact they've added this into the series when it wasn't apparently in the game. It was masterfully written and filmed. Just the fact when the doctor was talking to the guy in the military, and she is sitting there and her hands are shaking because she knows what's coming and her tea cup is rattling. I think that is just so effective in setting the stage for what's to come. And also with that, they use that opening to set the entire tone of the episode, and that episode had me on the edge of my seat the entire length of the episode, and I thought that was brilliantly done. Second thing I just wanted to mention, that is the clickers. I loved the design of the clickers. I like how they are really hard to kill. They're decently fast. Everything that makes a zombie very scary. The Walking Dead, all those zombies were really slow. When you start getting into fast zombies and zombies that are hard to kill, that is what terrifies you. And you felt that in that battle between Joel and those clickers. How just terrifying the whole situation was with these beings. I also like how they are starting to put Joel and Ella together and get that father-daughter type relationship that he misses out on because he, of course, lost Sarah. And so I think that is very important. And of course, that's going to grow and be a big part of this entire series. We all know that's what's going to happen. And along with Ella, just real quick, I like how they're using her as comic relief every now and then. This series could get very out of hand being dark and dreary, but that humor, like when she acted like she had the fungus, was in a perfect time to lighten everything up and to sort of let us relax for just a second. And then, of course, the last thing is just this whole idea of losing Tess. It was not something that I think we were expecting. I wasn't expecting it. And as I say, I have not played any of the games, so I don't know how far Tess makes it in the game. But this was not something I was expecting. I was shocked when it was revealed she was bitten. And the thing there is, we don't know where she was bitten. Usually when your main characters have something like that happen, it doesn't happen off screen. And they're using a lot of off-screen action to further the story. And I think that's really good. You don't have to see everything happen on the screen. We can just find out that it did. And that's perfectly fine for me. Okay. So with that is huge shock number 1. Actually number 2, I guess. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot more. Now, with that being said, I do want to grade this episode, and I'm going to grade this episode, I'm going to be honest, I'm going to give this episode an A+. I don't think this episode could have been any better. With everything from the very beginning with the episode in Jakarta, all the way to the very end with Tess's death, I thought it advanced the story. It developed the characters. It gave us some humor. You were sitting on the side of your seat. How do you get any better than this episode? How do you get any better than this episode? Now, with that being said, everybody, as we get out of here, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment below. And I'll see you next time on the Fandom Realm.